Hey, we are live on a Wednesday. It's another episode of SnL. My name is Lane.
And I'm Scott right here, ready to provide you with some great information today.
That's exactly right. So, when you're selling a home, right, Scott, you have to find another place to buy, right? Whether it's local or out of the area. But maybe there's also homeowners that want to sell, but they're not sure where to go or how to possibly buy. And we've been getting that question a lot. Like, I would sell my home and I would love to take advantage of the high prices right now. However, I have no idea where I'm going. I have no idea how I'm even going to buy. It's a competitive marketplace right now. There's no inventory. So we decided to take it upon ourselves and create a list of 10 possible solutions to overcome those fears, if you will.
Exactly. So many people want to take advantage of the marketplace that we're in today, and their plans for their life, their next chapter of life, aren't quite to fruition yet. But that's why we have the list. So we can kind of put some perspective around that and give you some things to just kind of be thinking about and help add some clarity.
So this particular segment that we're doing will help anybody who's in the middle of selling or getting ready to sell, and anybody who's had thoughts of selling but kind of concerned about where to go next or what to think about next. So let's jump in. Let's start with number one. Here we go. 10 tips to success. Buy new construction. So if you're staying here locally in Orange County, there are still some new developments that are available to you to be able to purchase. And a lot of the builders, believe it or not, will still allow you to be contingent. They just require that, one, your house has to be on the market, and two, you have to be able to provide them with escrow information. So if you already know a new home development that you want to move into, or that you're exploring and that you're looking at, you have to, and you're contingent, it's still possible, but you have to be a little bit further along in the selling process, in the sense that your home has to be at least on the market and prove to the builders that it is.
Yep, exactly. And let's just take that one step back, Lane, and just identify, for the purposes of this video and selling and buying, what the word contingent actually means. It simply means that you will need the funds that are coming out of your current home to successfully close the next purchase. You are contingent on that close with regards to the underlying sale. And so that's why builders, for example, want to see that you're leased on the market. And then once you do go under contract, they're going to want to have a relationship with you and your escrow officer as that transaction moves forward, because they're going to want to be comfortable, and increasingly more comfortable as the time gets closer for that new build to be finished.
Exactly right. And there are some new construction, like I mentioned, available in Orange County. We have a list of everything that is available in Orange County. However, if there are maybe even more opportunities out of the area, so to speak, for new construction. And so a lot of those builders are taking contingent offers as well. And we work very well with the builders.
Absolutely. And one other side note too, with regards to being out of state, and to Lane's point with regards to accepting contingencies, we find in most other parts of the country, they're even more lenient than they are here in California. So you can have the luxury of getting under contract contingent with something out of state, even on perhaps a piece of standing inventory that's already complete, or even if there's a completion date coming up. And on that same note, we can also help our clients and help you negotiate rent backs, staying in your home now, so you can not only be able to buy contingent, but have a seamless move from one home to the next. Not always, but if there's a will, there's a way.
Exactly right. Let's move on to the next one. Custom build on vacant land. Now that one's really good too, and actually it's becoming more popular lately. For some of our retirees that want to stay here locally, they want to build their dream home, maybe on a view lot or something. But what you want to do is you want to check the zoning and all that. But yeah, they're buying the plot of land and they're starting construction on their new home. So that way they know exactly where they want to go. They want to build a brand new home on a vacant lot and basically retire there and live there and find a nice view. And there's still a lot of great lots available when we last checked here locally in Orange County, and even more so out of the area.
No, absolutely. That's a great idea with regards to that. And in this case, of course, if you don't know where you're going to go, most of the folks in this position do know they already have their lot picked out. They're going to sell their home, perhaps use the equity in the home to fund the construction loan and get going. And they're going to have a secondary kind of a gap place where they're going to live while the construction is being undertaken. And usually that's close by, so they get to monitor the exciting process.
Yeah. And the reason why we started off with these two is because these two are options that you can possibly look into without having to sell your home and use the proceeds for it. Obviously, if you're going to be putting in a bunch of money on the remodel, you probably are going to sell it and then maybe go into a temporary rental to be able to do that, depending on your financial situation, of course. But in moving on to number three, it's really hard to get an offer accepted if you have to sell yours first and be contingent upon the successful sale of that to be able to buy. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to come up with non-contingent options. And there's a ton of third-party companies out there that will give you what we call, or what is called, a bridge loan, which is a short-term temporary loan that they put a lien against your current home, give you the money to be able to go out and buy your next home non-contingent. And now you're writing offers potentially all cash.
Yep, exactly. And you know, because as we've talked about in previous videos, people today are sitting on the highest amounts of home equity ever, because when you do a bridge loan, you're going to have to qualify for that loan as well as the current encumbrance you have on your house. So because you will possibly be carrying 2 loans at one time. But we're finding, again, most people have significant amounts of equity now. So the loan that they have on their current home is well beneath their means. And there's a little bit of a risk because you're carrying 2 mortgages. But we feel in this particular climate, the risk is very minimal because, as you've seen from our previous videos as well, the average days on market is very minimal right now. So from the time you put your home up on the market and you close, you're looking at 45 days to 60 days maximum. And you also have that overlapping escrow with the new home. So the chances of carrying both of those mortgage for any more than about 30 days is very slim.
And if you have substantial equity in your home, you might be able to take advantage of the next one, number 4 here, which might be a little bit cheaper of an option even than the bridge loan. And that'll be buying non-contingent using a HELOC. HELOC meaning home equity line of credit. So basically getting another, like a second loan, if you will, or a line of credit that you can use towards maybe not necessarily buying all cash, but maybe you're using as a down payment because you qualify for being able to be on the 2 different loans that Scott mentioned for number 3. And then now you're using that down payment amount from the home equity line of credit to be able to purchase your next home non-contingent.
Exactly. I mean, that I don't have anything to add to that. That's just, you're basically just using that equity in your house, pulling some money out and using that temporarily.
Well, talk about number 5 then, if you will.
Let's do it. Temporarily move into a rental. And this, of course, speaks to many people that want to have 0 risk. And they're also concerned saying, man, my house is going fast because I know there's a lack of inventory. I want to have the luxury of taking my time to find the next dream home. I don't want to feel pressured by time. I don't want to feel pressured by financial constraints. This is the option for those folks that really don't have a tolerance for being in a rush or want to minimize risk. You sell your house, you get into a comfortable rental. Generally, short-term ones are hard to get right now, so you're looking probably committing to a 6-month lease or so. Most folks will put things in storage and save money during this rental time and just rent a 1 or 2 bedroom place. It's kind of small. Keep life simple and almost think about you on a little bit of a vacation while you're in search of the new home. And this can be if you're buying local in our same market or even if you're moving out of the area. But this is certainly the lowest stress way to go if you don't have the tolerance for kind of being in a go-go mentality.
And if you don't want to take a bridge loan or a home equity line of credit to be able to be non-contingent. So there are some corporate housing options available or some short-term housing that Scott mentioned too, but the inventory for those are a little bit down, a little bit hard to get into, but still possible. Where a lot of our clients, what they're doing, as Scott mentioned, just putting their stuff into storage, getting into a fully furnished corporate housing for a couple months while they find their next one. But then that allows them to be able to be purchasing non-contingent without having to move their stuff from a short-term rental then to their new home, so that way their stuff still left in storage and they're just taking advantage of a fully furnished rental.
Absolutely. And to Lane's point, for clarification purposes, when I talk about traditional rentals, you've got a 6-month or a 1-year lease. As Lane mentioned, the other option is that fully furnished corporate rental. Those rates are going to be at a higher amount, but sometimes there's a convenience factor involved. So the good news is you've got options, whether you want to stay for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, or a year in between. All the options exist out there for you.
All right, number 6, consider less competitive areas or price points. And if you find them, let us know, especially in Orange County. Things seem to be really expensive right now. But yeah, that is number 6 on our list. So a lot of our clients were starting in a particular area that they absolutely wanted to be, but because of tight inventory, they're starting to expand it a little bit. And they're starting to open up their search results to maybe an area that's a little bit less expensive, or maybe a home that needs a little bit more work that still meets all their criteria, and they're just going to put in the work over time and remodel it themselves. And so they're starting at lower price points or a little bit less of expensive areas.
Absolutely. And as Lane notes, Orange County is super, super competitive. The rest of the country is on fire, relatively speaking. And I use that word relatively speaking. We do know of friends and clients that have been relocating to other parts of the United States. And while it's competitive and heated up, not near to the degree that we see here in California. So there are markets out there where you can pause, and you're going to have a little bit of less competition.
And this also refers to getting an acceptance on an offer. So if homes are selling for 3, 5, 10% above the list price, and just using round numbers, let's say your max budget is $1 million for a home in Orange County, you might want to start at $900,000 when you're looking, because it very well could be that $900,000 home ends up after negotiations closer to the million. So that might be just a mindset of adjusting your max criteria to that 9 to 950 range and lowering it by 5-10%.
Yeah, Lane's got a great point, because again, as we know, the shift in the market has been kind of from an auction mentality from what used to be a for sale mentality. With for sale mentality is we always would go up in our price point thinking we're going to negotiate down from that sales price. And to avoid disappointment, Lane made a very, very valid point that you kind of want to adjust those expectations in the opposite direction right now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so what's the next one? Contingent upon the seller's replacement property. So do you want to talk about that one, or do you?
Absolutely. This is taking the ultimate measure of control. So for example, when just as this title of number 7 states, you can put your home on the market and you can dictate the terms and say, you know what, I will not close escrow on this house until I have successfully found and negotiated on another property, whether it be getting contingent offer accepted, whether it be that I've got the funds to buy non-contingent. This option is for those folks that, not necessarily from just a financial situation, but from a desire situation, say, I'm not comfortable selling my home until I know exactly what I'm going to get on the other end. Now, you're going to be limited perhaps to your buyers that are going to hang out and wait indefinitely for you to find a new home. Sometimes sellers will put a cap on this and say, you know what, I've got up to 90 days to find a successful replacement property. And then at that point, Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Buyer, we would go into another level of the transaction, whether it be at that point, I'm willing to close and go into a rental, et cetera, et cetera. This one, the rules are just myriad out there. There's so many ways this can be put together. But the thing to remember is that if you choose this option, you are perhaps limiting yourself to the amount of buyers that are going to kind of put up with your time frame, because most buyers want that excitement. They want to get under contract and they want to close in a set amount of time.
So Scott, let's use your 90-day example. Let's say I'm a seller. We make it contingent upon me finding a successful replacement property. Mm-hmm. After 90 days have come and I haven't been able to find that replacement property. What are the obligations on my end? Do I lose out on anything besides the buyer? Do I lose out anything monetarily? Like what happens then?
Okay. And I think that's a fantastic point. As I said, the rules can be drawn up however can be mutually agreed upon by buyer and seller in that case. You could have a situation where you say, I've got 90 days to find a replacement property. If day 91 comes, I haven't found it. Escrow's canceled. We all go our separate ways. The buyer gets their earnest money deposit back, and there's no harm, no foul to anyone. Now, again, will a buyer wait that long in this marketplace with fear of interest rates going up? Probably not. And sometimes when we do these things too, we'll defer any inspections, any outlays of cash on the buyer's perspective until you've been able to find that replacement property and kind of go full force for them ahead of time. To Lane's point, though, you can also negotiate and say, you know what, give me 90 days. And maybe you as the seller then have a backup plan in mind saying, I feel pretty confident I'm going to find my house with 90 days, but I am committed to moving. If I can't find it after 90 days, I will just go ahead and move into, with a corporate rental housing, what have you, move into secondary home. I will move forward with the transaction. If you're willing to go that route, I'll tell you right now, you're probably not going to lose any buyers, because again, that's just putting a delayed gratification forward to the buyer. They know they've got the house, they know they've got the funds. The only risk is perhaps if interest rates go up in that time because they can't get a lock for that long. But it's really not a lot different than having a lengthier escrow, but you're buying some more time as a seller and taking a little bit of risk, but minimizing quite a bit by giving yourself that time frame. Sometimes it's 30, 60, or 90 days. Is that kind of clear, Lane?
No, it's very clear. And I think because the sellers hold most of the cards in this particular marketplace, a lot of buyers are flexible and accommodating and allowing this to happen and are granting extensions because it's so hard just to even get an acceptance for buyers. And so once they have one, they want to hold on to it for as long as they can. So you might be able to find somebody that's very agreeable and easy to work with and be able to help you navigate towards you finding that replacement property.
Exactly. And on that same note, we've experienced that just with our own buyers. We know buyers are so frustrated when they win, so to speak, and winning right now is being chosen, getting under contract. They're willing to put up with quite a bit, but just knowing they can go, that sigh of relief, I've got my home.
Yep, absolutely. Let's go on to number 8. Seller financing. So this might be one of the more rare ones that you're going to come across. However, believe it or not, Scott, this is something that happened to me personally. A few years ago, I bought my dream home. And when I went to go, figure out, it was off market. It was somebody that I knew, but he told me the price and I knew how much I was qualified for. And it was just short of what he wanted, but I still wanted the house and I still wanted to make it happen. And I think I was $40,000 short based on loan amount and down payment amount and everything like that. So what we agreed upon doing, Scott, is he was going to carry the $40,000 loan for me until I paid him off. And I was able to pay him off in 6 months. But if you're missing out on your dream home by $40,000 or $50,000 or whatever it is, and interest rates are so low and the bank is not going to give you that particular loan, maybe you can negotiate the seller to carry that difference and they might be agreeable to doing so. I was fortunate enough that the seller was, but you don't get what you don't ask for. And this is a particular option that you might not have thought about that, hey, why don't you throw it out there and see if you can hold on to that dream home.
I think, Lane, you're absolutely right. And we'll take a trip down memory lane too. Philip and I have a very similar situation from our very first home. And I think it also speaks to getting creative. There's a way that, in this case, Lane paid back in 6 months. The seller did that more of a courtesy. He made a little bit of money on his investment because Lane paid him an interest rate. When Philip and I bought our first home, we were a little bit short as well. We had a very good rapport with the seller. He had been a representative on a condo building that we had bought a few years before. So he knew us and he approached us and said, I'm moving out of state and I thought maybe you guys would like to move up to a single family home. And I said, oh my gosh, we really can't afford it right now, but blah, blah, blah. Anyway, long and the short of it was we had some money in savings for part of the down payment, but not the rest of it. He wasn't willing to carry money, but his aunt, who was a retiree and just lived a few cities away, had money that was not earning very much interest. And to make a long story short, the second half of our down payment was funded through a second trustee through this aunt, and we had a step program to pay her back over 10 years, and it was a very nominal amount that stepped up in increments every year for the next 10 years. And we didn't pay back in 6 months, but we paid that back in 4.5 years. And we used to just drive to Costa Mesa, give her check at her apartment complex every month, and it was a very nice amicable transaction. So again, the answer is if you don't ask, you don't get, and open the dialogue. If there's ways out there that it can be mutually beneficial, the seller or someone that the seller knows can make a little bit of money on the investment. If they feel that's safe at low risk, it's a win-win.
Yeah, do not give up on your dream home. There could be a creative way out there to make it happen without putting you in debt or financial turmoil.
Absolutely, yes. I think I'm going to say there's the 2 C's here, Lane, is creativity and communication. Don't be afraid to communicate. Don't be afraid to ask. There's oftentimes so many options out there that we don't even know about till we just open the door.
I love that. CC. Okay, what's number 9?
Negotiate a lease back as part of your sale. This is another way where the seller kind of can have a little bit more control. You're kicking the can down the road a little bit because you're not open-ended like you would be with just saying, I'm contingent on finding another property, but you are saying, I'm going to stay in my house for X amount of days or months after the closing at a negotiated rent back. Traditionally speaking, when the market was a little bit more even, that rent back might be exactly at market rent. Today, sellers are negotiating a little bit under market in some cases, and the buyers are willing to accept that. They're looking at that as all part of their financial, package, if you will, on what they're investing in the house. What we're seeing, I'd like Lane's thought on this, but we're seeing leasebacks anywhere from 30 to 60, in some cases 90 days. I'm going to say the average is about 30 to 60 days, what we're seeing, but it allows that seller to stay in their home just a little bit longer. But the great news is, as soon as escrow closes, they're now non-contingent buyers for their up leg, because again, their money's sitting in the bank, and that's when the fund begins, and they become non-contingent. So we're negotiating very short escrow periods, and then a lease back period that benefits the seller and gives them time to find their next property. And then one last thing, we're usually putting a caveat in that it's a lease back for X amount of days or sooner by mutual agreement. So again, once the seller gets under contract, if it's not at the end of that lease back, they'll negotiate the close on the next property and then can amend the possession date for the buyers on the down leg.
Yeah, and I would say you're right on. 30 to 60 days is about average. And I was actually negotiating something right before we jumped on the call for one of our buyers, where they had sent us in a counter offer that the seller wants to rent back from us for free for a month. And I don't blame them. You know, most kind of recently, Scott and I negotiated for one of our sellers that he was able to stay in the house and rent back for free for up to 4 months. So it's out there. Like, a lot of free rent backs are kind of common right now, especially if the sellers hold all the cards and there's a multiple offer situation. So don't be surprised if you get into a bidding war, not a bidding war, multiple offer situation, and they counter you free rent. And obviously you can negotiate that if you want, or maybe not agree to 30 days of free rent, maybe agree to 14 days of free rent, but there's always different ways that you can work that out. But yeah, negotiating a lease back as part of your sale is very common right now. But let me ask you a question, Scott. Let's bring Scott back in. Let's say we negotiate a 60-day rent back and I'm not able to find a replacement property in 60 days. What happens if I'm a seller?
Well, like we said, if you don't ask, you don't get. As you get closer to that time frame and you want to stay in your home a little bit longer, you want to keep that dialogue going, you go and you ask for an extension. It's possible to have an extension built in originally. Again, you're asking for more control. If you do that you could have 30-day extensions built in ahead of time. But I think Lane's question was, when we get to the end of the line, you've got two choices. You can be granted an extension, or you need to plan or have a plan B already in place. It says, I will now make that interim move.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. But let's wrap it up with number 10. This is it. We're getting number 10. Negotiate a longer escrow from the beginning. Now, I know sellers especially, they want money in the bank and they want a shorter escrow, and so do we, by the way. But if time is, if you need more time, it's okay if you ask for a 45-day escrow or even a 60-day escrow. If you need it, we maybe recommend trying the rent back first. That way you have money in the bank, and then maybe staying in that extra 30 days or that extra 60 days after close of escrow, potentially for free, before you try to negotiate a longer escrow. But if they're not going to grant that free rent back and you don't have any other options, maybe try going in for a longer escrow instead.
Absolutely. And there's a reason this is number 10, I think. And these aren't necessarily in order of importance, but I think Lane and I can agree on the fact that this is probably the least popular of the options, because one thing we learned early on in our careers is a good escrow is a closed escrow. As long as an escrow is open, there's the danger that it's going to fall out. It's not going to close. Even if you get all contingencies removed and something were to happen, you still would have to fight for your earnest money deposit if you're a seller. We don't like to go down that road. It doesn't happen very often. But one thing I'll mention, in extreme cases, it can be mutually beneficial. There could be some circumstances with who the seller feels is the absolute perfect buyer. Most of the time, it's the one willing to pay the highest price. Maybe they have some underlying circumstances that a longer escrow benefits them. And again, if both sides can come together and agree that this is what works best for both of us, then we could have a win.
That's perfect. And that's all 10 for us. But my only ask, if you're watching this right now, if you know anybody who wants to sell, but they're a little bit nervous because of the lack of inventory, they're not sure what to do, they're not sure where to go, there's probably a tip in here that they're going to love to hear. Share that with them. That's the best thing that you can do for us, is to share this particular video. And if you have any questions or you want us to talk about a topic in particular, leave that in the comments and we'll make sure that we get to it. We love doing these SnL shows.
We absolutely love it. And again, with the tips today, the main thing we're doing is trying to get information out there, get the conversation going between potential buyers and sellers, so more transactions can take place, more people can get what they want with their sales, and more people can get into homes. So thanks so much for watching, and we will see you next week.
See you next Wednesday.